Hey everybody, welcome to the Essential Guide to Link Building for SEO. Specifically, we'll be talking about B2B link building, but there's not a huge difference in terms of the strategy and tactics, more just the type of links that you want to get. I'm Graham McConnell. I'm a Director of Marketing at Obility. I was a former SEO here as well. And so I've had a lot of experience doing link building, figuring out link building targets, tactics, strategy as well. So what we'll be going over today is why we build links, the types of link building, link prospecting, qualifying, outreach, reporting on link building, and just some of the general takeaways from the entire presentation. So let's start with why we build links. Why are they important? So first of all, in SEO, link building, backlinks, followed backlinks to your site are very important in determining the trust that you gain with Google. So in most cases, there is a direct correlation between the amount of quality links that you have to your website, coming into your website, and how well you rank. Now, of course, there are myriad of factors. Link building is just one, but it is a big one. It's a big percentage of the pie. And again, the caveat, I said, a lot of quality links. We can probably get into what that means and how to measure that later, but suffice it to say, if you just have a million links coming from sites that no one else goes to, that's not going to help you as much as, say, 100 links coming from other popular websites is kind of a way to think of it. So really the goal of the link building is to have those popular, those influential websites linked to you. Then the search engine, specifically Google, we'll talk about a lot today, the algorithm takes into account those links that come to your pages, evaluating them based on a couple of different factors. One just being, again, what is the trust? What is the influential site that is linking back, and why is it that way? Or even specifically down to the page level. And then what page it's coming into based on the content from page to website. And that website being your website. And a simple way to think of it is that, hey, if someone's linking to you, another website is linking to you, it's like getting a thumbs up on Google or LinkedIn or, again, a vote for your site. It's just a way to signify that someone is finding this important, and so they deemed a link to it. And then, of course, I mentioned at the top, quality and relevance over quantity. So yes, you want a lot of links, but you want a lot of high quality links versus just looking at the total number. So again, what makes a good backlink profile? Anchor text, you can see here the clickable text and a hyperlink, and the hyperlinks underlined. You can see this on all kinds of websites, even a Word document, but that is the anchor text itself is where it says hyperlink. So instead of something like click here or learn more, which is fine for buttons, and in some cases it makes sense to have that. But if you link hyperlink to a page that's talking about hyperlinks, that's going to be a little better signal. So that communicates to Google exactly what the page is about, because that anchor text is going to another page that speaks to what that anchor text mentioned. Natural link building, like as in we're not taking every single keyword on a website and having that link to every single page that's about those keywords. That's just unnatural. And then link building, the anchor text, that can help increase that targeted or mixed anchor text. So again, however that keyword is or phrase is being linked to, the page should be about that. And so that helps that individual term rank on that page. And then I talked a little bit about follow links. There's follow versus no follow. The no follow attribute is still a link, but you're not getting that vote, as we've said before. It's not a thumbs up in the same way. A lot of sites like news sites, press releases, things like that, they will have links in them, but they will be no follow. Part of that is just due to it was being manipulated. And so that's a good way to first of all, for that site, not to just link out to every single thing and for that to count as credit. Because the other way to kind of think of it is if you're getting links from a site that links to everything, then it's diluting the value of all those links coming out, and it doesn't really help you anyway. So a no follow link is a way to make sure that if you do have a followed link, that is going to be worth some of that credit, that vote that we're talking about. So yeah, link equity is kind of the way to think about that. A follow means that equity is actually getting passed on, you're getting that value. But you probably will always have both. And so if you only had followed links, that would also be kind of fishy as well. Not that you would necessarily get punished, but depending upon the type of links that you were getting and the amount of links you were getting, if they're all followed, that would be looked at as some sort of manipulation and you could get punished for it. So the link destination is the actual page that it's going to on a website. So you have that hypertext that's linking to an individual page. Most of the time they're going to your homepage. You know, you think of a lot of the links you see are branded links, either a product or the name of your brand. And really what we like to see, and that's important, but really what we like to see is that you have links to your deep pages, meaning basically everything but your homepage. So that could be a product page that you're trying to get to rank, or a service or solutions type page, blog pages. You think about what type of pages you want to bring people in on. A lot of it is top of the funnel, which is going to be these broader terms. So maybe, you know, you're not taking them to a solutions page as much as you're taking them to like a what is type of page. So, you know, it could be a blog or some kind of glossary page. And so think of it as like a definition. If someone else is referring to that phrase or that product, and you have a page that talks about, oh, this is what that is, here's a holistic or top level view of that, that's where that link can get sent to, and then that page can end up ranking better for those terms. Site quality, so that's EAT acronym, expert, authoritative, and trustworthy. That's where you want to get your sites links from. Looking at that search quality rater guidelines can give you an idea of evaluation when you're going through that. And then relevance, you know, if the age-old example is if you have a website about dogs and you're getting links from websites that are all about cats, like that's not relevant. It doesn't make sense. Link building gone wrong. So I mentioned a little bit earlier about like manipulating the system and what can actually make Google take action based on a profile. And usually by taking action, it just means that you're not getting punished in the sense of like, we're going to shut your site down or move all your rankings. It's just going to take away that credit that you'd be getting from the links, which in turn, the effect of that would be, yeah, maybe you're not going to rank as well for some of the terms. So anchor text was, if you just had links with anchor text in them, your pages would rank really well. Like that was like the best way to get your rank up. So because of that, the manipulation, like I spoke to, they got a little more complicated. So that it wasn't, it's hard to say if it's not as clear what to do, but it's just, I think the main way to look at it is things need to be more varied. There's not one or two specific type of links that you need that are just going to have you do well. You need a nice range of links and different types of links. So anything that appears to be spammy, like I mentioned, maybe you have all follow links coming from this, you know, one website, that's going to get ignored. And that would, in a sense, penalize you without them having to take direct action. It's just like, oh, we're not going to give you credit for these links anymore. So I spoke a little bit about the ranking factors and how big of a ranking factor linking is. So you can see in kind of the top right there, highlighted by yellow, you've got domain level links and page level links. So domain level links is just basically any links going into your domain at all. That's about 15% of the pie. And then going into all those other pages, any page, like a specific page, that's going to be about 14% of what makes that page rank well. So if you have a high domain authority, which some tools use that term, but basically saying like that is a one number that says your entire domain has this authority based on all of the links going into every single page. So that's one factor. And then theoretically, if that number was 10, your domain authority level is 10, which would be really small, but just as an example, you could have a page, like your home page could have way more links going to it to any other page. That page level authority could be higher than 10. Let's say it's 23. And so you're not beholden to just the overall amount of links you get to the entirety of your site. That's why we talk about targeted links going to specific pages. You can say, hey, even though our domain authority, our level is much smaller than one of our competitors, we actually could beat them on some of these individual terms if we get links into our pages that we want to compete with them on. And so that's a strategy. But combined, you could kind of think of it as like, okay, yeah, that's a big piece of the pie. That's almost 30% of the total pie. And you can kind of see some of the other stuff, keyword, obviously, the content that's on there for whatever specific keyword you're trying to rank for, maybe some social, user engagement, all that kind of stuff, your brand comes together, and that's where you get all that. So, you know, this is from Moz, which is a pretty respected SEO. That's what we use to host many of our clients on. But these aren't the only things. These are just the biggest levels, and they're all can be broken into micro rankings within them. Like, of course, everyone, maybe not everyone knows, but like on a page level, there's certain places that if you stick the phrase, it's going to have a bigger impact rather than if you just had it listed in the content, right? But if you have it in the title of the page, the meta page title, like that's going to help Google and people determine what the page is about. You know, if they go to, again, using the cat dogs example, they look up dogs, they get to a page and the page title says cats in it, that's not a very good signal for why, you know, that you're on the right page and that's what the page is about. And most likely it's not going to be. And now it's usually much more it's not that subtle. It's usually much more, or not that obvious. It's much more subtle what the keyword phrase could be. However, that is a kind of good way to think about it. So we only recommend that if we're going to build links, right, we're going to adhere to those specific guidelines. And Google provides a really good guideline sheet of, hey, these are what we consider non-spammy links. And these are the kind that rank well according to Moz, and you can kind of combine that and come to a consensus of like, this makes sense to target these type of links. Speaking of types of links, there's really three areas that we like to talk about: controlled links, company network, and outreach. And then the priority of those link building tactics, and you can think of it as like the risk, or really it's the effort versus reward. Partner links would be the top priority because they're going to get high quality links and should be relatively easy to work with your partners to make sure we're linking. Unlinked mentions, meaning maybe you have a product or brand on other sites that aren't being linked back to currently. So trying to reach out to those websites and, hey, can you link to us? You know, you're talking about us a lot, but you're not linking to it. And then outreach, which is, I think the old school way of thinking of this is writing a blog on someone else's site, which isn't necessarily the best way to think about it, but there is still that, hey, if we can provide some value in a content way for another site, then, hey, you know, this is the author, they're from this company, and that's where you maybe give your link. But the outreach itself is identifying what those websites are and then actually reaching out and trying to get them interested in publishing some content or working with them or an interview or whatever the case may be. So partner links, again, they're high quality links that you won't have your competitors going after because they're theoretically not partners with the same people that you are. You have that, you should have, if they're a partner, you should have a relationship with them. And really it's, you can think of it as like, I'm sending you an email. Can we get a link since we're partners? We have this partner page. We have your logo here, or a little blurb about you. Let's get a link in there. So how to figure that out? You can make a template, and this is something we can provide if anyone wants. But Here's the website. Do they have a partner page? Are they currently reaching out to partners? And this is us thinking of it as like they're a client. Are they linking back to you, your client? And do they have like that blog resource section? Simple way to just keep track of all the partners and are there links there? And then there's tools we can use to analyze those partner websites to say if their links are coming into you, because you can't just go through every page, right? And expect to find, hey, here's a link coming in to us. No, we would use a tool that could scrape their site just looking for what links they have going out, outbound links. So then okay, they have a partner page, that makes it easy, and they're already linking to other partners and we're not getting one. Maybe they have a partner page, no linking out, no partner page. Is there a place to do something else, like mentioned here, a blog post or a case study that are about each other, or something like even an event maybe hosting, you can link to each other from that. And then if they just don't have a partner page or a blog and it just doesn't make sense, obviously the only option is to ignore them. I do think there's always an opportunity to say, hey, we could benefit each other if we got more proactive in our partnerships, talking about each other and copy, whatever the case may be. But that's obviously going to be a harder sell, and then you're getting out of the realm of the point of starting with partners to begin with, which was the ease. Unlinked mentions. So like I mentioned before, websites, publications, whatever the case, you're mentioned in it. Usually it's a brand, maybe it's a product or a solution. Mentioning you, there's no links to you. So if they are mentioned, you can reach out and say, can you link to us because you're talking about us a lot? And I think that's just courteous to do anyway. Most of the time, if you're talking about a different product or company, especially in a non-promotional way, like linking out is the least you can do. So the hardest thing to do is to find these. Again, there are tools you can use. Sometimes you just don't have a lot of unlinked mentions. I mean, there's many companies that we work with that the brand isn't at that level yet where other people are talking about them. And that's part of the reason we want to do SEO or paid search or paid social, whatever the case, to get that awareness out there. So you can't necessarily put the cart before the horse in some of those situations. Finding unlinked mentions, Google Alerts, great way to do this. You can just sign up, say, hey, anytime our product or specific solution or our brand is mentioned, you'll get an alert from Google, and then you can go check to see, hey, was that linked to or not? So that might be a good way to start when your brand is not as well known, but over time, you're hoping that it goes up. And this is a way that you can figure out, okay, yeah, it went through. We got this right away. Oh, this was a nice article that mentioned us, but they didn't link to us. And then you can reach out that way. Of course, we have the caveat is like maybe someone mentions you on the website that's mentioning to you just would not provide value if they link to you. Now, I would say that's rare. Like most websites can provide some sort of value, but it's possible that you're getting mentioned on like kind of a spammy looking site. We just want to evaluate that site to make sure it would be a good fit. Outreach. So some of this is just promoting your own content. Some of it's a guest post. Again, some of it could be guest speaking, anything like that it makes sense. So this is the hardest part of SEO, and unfortunately, it's probably the most impactful on a grand scale. I mean, there's a finite amount of partners that you're going to have. There's a finite amount of mentions that you're going to have, especially if you're a newer company and not a well-known brand name at this point. Can't all be Salesforce, right? So there's going to have to be some level of outreach to try to get in front of these people. And I think one mistake that gets made when we specifically talk about link building is that outreach is why we would be doing link building. I think it's better to think of it the opposite way. Like there should be promotional content and outreach being done by whoever is doing PR for the company, whether that's another firm or that's someone internally. maybe it's the same person doing social media, whatever the case. Many times there's already some type of content promotion happening. And what we want to make sure of from an SEO point of view is that we are a part of that process, or at least making aware that when that goes out, we need to try to get links sent back to the site and what those links should be. So if there's content about solution X that's going out there, we want to make sure that that content is linking back to our page on our website, being as in the client solution X page, because that would make sense. Or at the very least to the home page or something about the brand, about us, whatever the case may be. Instead of just saying we purely need to create this content to get links. Because creating content for just getting links, it's hard not to end up having that be spammy, just in like, oh, we're just got to get this done so we can get a link, right? Where we want to think is like, okay, what other value can we get from doing this? And then, hey, the extra cherry on top would be, can we get that link back? I think that's a better way to think about it. Because yes, no one's going to want content that you're like, hey, can we get a link? Okay, yeah, we'll write you something, versus here's some valuable content that'll benefit you and it helps kind of get our name out there. Would you be interested is kind of the brass tacks pitch. And then we also just don't want to have tons of guest posting, like as our only means to getting that in, because again, the manipulation of, okay, well, they're only getting these type of links could be something that gets ignored or penalized by Google. So you have to come up with the topics. And like I mentioned before, they should never be self-promotional. No one's going to be interested in that. First of all, not many people are going to read that if it's on a third-party site. You have advertising for that. This is not what we're going after here. So shouldn't be self-promotional, should be providing some value. What's the expertise that the client, the company can provide on a topic? And so usually that's something educational, but you're being that thought leader, like not about our company, but if they say this person at this company is an expert on this, even though they didn't tell us that this is their product or their solution, like that's going to go a long way. So that's the primary topic creating that we would look at. And so just here's some tips, like what you should write about. Like, okay, look at what your prospects are publishing in the past. This means targets that we're looking at to get links. You can look at what competitors have had as guest posts. Most sites have guidelines of, hey, this is what we accept. This is how long it should be, other stipulations. And of course, if you can talk about topics that are directly related to your company, you should. So if you're working with Obility, we've developed a target key list, and those are the keywords and phrases we're trying to get to rank higher. We would prefer that the content that we're writing is touching on those. So if you do get a link that comes back to one of those pages, that's going to help that page rank higher. So there's a lot of tools you can use. BuzzSumo, Ahrefs has a content explorer. There's just some manual work you can go through and to try to figure out things. But these make it easy. You can put in those keyword targets and then they can find you some content that's speaking to those. You can see here, we looked up link building, what's the most popular content. I think it's going to be hard probably to approach these three and say, hey, can you post this webinar that we're just doing right now? Because it's a direct competitor with what we're doing. So you need to find ways to add value to existing content or sites that have that type of content rather than mimic what's already out there in a lot of ways. Prospecting. So this is where we need to find those links. How do we find these targets that we would go after? So the prospecting can be easy. There's plenty of tools, you can look at competitors where they're getting links from, but how do we make sure they're a good fit for us? So that qualification process is really hard. When you need to outreach to these type of places, like there's no really good way to do that in bulk. No one likes mass emails, very little success from that. Very little success from a personal email of outreach, but that's really how you have to kind of go through it. And so that makes it even harder. It's really a sales-like job. And then as you go through it, you can qualify. Link mining means, again, finding other places, competitors, you could say, or even related in the industry links that would, or websites that would link to you. So here's some of the tools, Mozbar. You can just have the website in your address bar, and it's going to give you some stats right there, specifically domain authority. Again, the higher that number out of 100 means the better authority it has. So if you get a link from them and they're a 90, like that's going to contribute a lot more than getting one from a site that has 33 for their domain authority. I will say one thing to always keep in mind is that theoretically, every site is trying to improve that domain authority over time. So maybe you go with you get a 33, a link back from a domain authority of 33. But in 2 years, maybe that's up to a 50 and it's looking a lot better, right? So don't just disqualify something because it's lower. It also probably means they would have more use for you in terms of helping them produce content or becoming a partner or something like that. Just because they're trying to move up as well. Buzz marker from BuzzStream, it can help track your link building, as well as using like a outreach spreadsheet, which we use a lot of times. Link clump, just if you're using Chrome as your browser, it has a nice drop down for the link or series of links. And then we have a list of advanced search operators, which is really something we've used to find these guest posting and outreach opportunities. So how to use it, we have all our keywords, take that advanced search operator, we filter by date, turn the Mozbar on, start clicking on the links, we can save those approved sites, and then we just keep doing that over and over again. So how do we qualify them? Do they have a blog? Do you see guest posts from other places? Are they linking out to other websites? Pretty standard stuff. Followed links versus non-followed links. Is there some type of policy for outreach? You know, all these things kind of go in, and if they meet most of these, especially those like top 4 or 5, then I think that's a good way to say, hey, these are qualified, we should reach out to them. And then finally, how do we find who to contact? You know, the contact page, about us page, pretty broad. If they have a guest post guidelines, they usually have like an editor or someone that it makes sense to contact, like an actual name or at least a specific email. You can use a tool like Hunter, but yeah, don't start at the top and like try to hit a CMO or a CEO to ask for that. Like really try to find out who would be in charge of that decision making. And again, this sounds a lot like sales, right? Like you're trying to find that gatekeeper or the person that would actually make the decision maker at that level, to try to, hey, we got to sell you that we want to do content for you and hopefully we can get a link. Link outreach. We are not reaching out and asking for a link. It sounds counterintuitive, but first of all, how many times would you answer that email from someone that's like, hey, can we get a link? We'll write some content for you. Probably not very often, even if it's more poetically done than that. You have to think about, like, there probably are, I mean, many of us here probably have been inundated with emails similar to that, or just simply asking to write content but not providing an actual value proposition. And so that's what's really important, is that when reaching out, we need to make sure we have topics ready that are relevant to that publication, to that website. And then that's going to provide a lot of value for them. It's going to be harder for them to not say no. Yes, we want value out of it, but the link is going to be a byproduct of the quality of content that we are providing for someone else. That's another important thing to think about too, is that it's not guaranteed that you will get a link when you reach out. And I can't imagine if you reach out and you agree to write some content and they're happy about what you're going to write, it's valuable to them, and then you find out that there's no link halfway or further through the process, you're not going to pull that. So we need to make sure that there is some value outside of a link for yourself. So it needs to be a well-written piece where maybe it's a thought leadership piece, or it's awareness that, hey, we're on this publication, they get a good circulation or website visits, and people are going to see our piece and they can associate it with us, whether or not we have a link or not. And that's why outreach is hard, because you aren't guaranteed to get a link. You have to put a lot of effort into creating the piece, and also just doing the outreach, and then all the other stuff that we talked about before about how to find these links, these targets to go after. So that's the important thing to remember in terms of outreach. But some of the tips when doing it is, keep it succinct, really short and to the point. We don't want to spam people. Personalize it as much as possible. I mean, it's always better to get an email to a person than it is to like contact us type of thing. And then always follow up, at least once. Maybe if you have a long period of time in between, you can reach out again. But if you're anything like me, I keep getting emails from the same person, replying to the previous email every time. And it's like, there's a reason I didn't respond to you. So yeah, 3 would be the absolute max, I think. When you're coming up with your subject line, again, succinct. Don't like overcapitalize or try to make it really stand out from just messing with your capitalization or uppercase. Like, just capitalize the first word, capitalize your brand name, just so that stands out and it looks like a normal sentence. Don't put their name in the subject line. Don't hide what you're reaching out for, right? Like, if you're offering some kind of content or specific topic, talk about that in the subject line at the very beginning. Obviously, you don't want it to be too long, but hey, we'd like to write blah, 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 blah for you kind of thing. So you need to make sure that blah, 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 blah is in that title or in that subject line. Make it easy to read once they get into the email. Again, I think even the body of the email needs to be succinct as much as possible. Explain what you're doing, explain the value, and then say, hey, I hope we hear back from you and all that. So part of this is going to come from if you've been to their site and you understand they have guest blog guidelines, you need to follow those and make them aware that Don't try to sneak something in that was in there that they said not to do. It will be appreciated if you follow exactly what they ask for. Many times they say, this is what you put in the subject line. These are the things that you need to have in the body. And it's like, bullet points, what's your name and contact info and stuff like that. And that's it. Boom, easy. Now, one of the things is Obility doesn't actually do outreach. And there's 3 primary reasons for that. And one of the big reasons is that it's really hard to do outreach and for quality links and scale that up, right? Like, it's one thing to reach out to a few places at once and you have 5 to 10 topics that you're kind of pulling from and pitching those. But anything more than that, like that's, maybe you're going to get 1 or 2 links a month from that. And that can be okay, but you're just never going to see a huge impact based on the amount of resources that you're using to do that or paying us to do, right? So that's probably the biggest thing, is just the profiles, the link profiles have a huge percentage already from news sources for like publicity, funding, going public, that type of thing. Those aren't the links we're going after, but that's where those more natural links come from. And so if we're reaching out, like it's a bang for the buck type of attitude. The other part of it is on-site versus off-site. So if we're working with you as an SEO agency, and we're trying to get, pages to get more traffic and keywords to rank, much of that is going to require content be created for your website versus creation for outreach. Many times a piece of outreach is going to be 1,200 words. That's a pretty substantial amount of content to write. We would like to see that written for your own website so we can optimize it. Or maybe you're adding 500 words to this page, and this page needs a lot more work. It needs 1,000, that kind of thing. Some companies have the resources to write as much content as possible. Most companies that we work with, even the big companies, it's very difficult to get just content for what we need to rank better on site. And then it gets harder if you use some of those resources to write it for link outreach, right? So from our perspective, it makes more sense to use that for on-site. Again, it's different for every company, but in our experience, the on-site content can be a hurdle as is. And so why would we want to say, hey, let's write off-site and then we can't produce anything for on-site? Like, we think writing new content for on-site is worth more than just getting a link or two from that content that you'd be writing there. And then finally, attribution. It is extremely difficult to track the effectiveness of the links that you're getting. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to report on it in the next section here. But yeah, it's, hey, we spent this much time and this much effort, and we got this link back that was worth this much. And it went, our domain authority didn't budge, and our page authority went up a little bit on the page that received the link. We also were doing other things on the website or that specific page that would make the ranking of the keyword go up. So was it purely because of the link? Is it a combination of that and the optimizations we were doing? Is it the content that we added on that page, to help it rank better? It's very difficult to say this is what it's worth. So the attribution aspect makes it very hard to say, okay, you spent this much on links and this is what we got for it. So how we're going to report on it, because we do have to say what we're doing and what is the success. The success metrics are kind of a different story, but we want to at least report on, okay, this is what we're doing, so we can see those correlations. It can take half a year, 3 months before you see any results. And the other thing to think about is the outreach type of links that we'd be going after. They're not going to provide a direct traffic source. So you can get referral traffic from other websites. It's not unheard of course, right? And plenty of them are, maybe you have your products or your services or even your company, like in more of those directory type links. And those are things that we can help find, that you can get those placed without necessarily having to write a bunch of content. But you think about, if you read a blog post and maybe it's written, maybe you don't even know it's written by another source, third-party source. You're not clicking on a link necessarily in there. And if you are, it's very rare. So that's how you would get that referral traffic. And that's not something that is necessarily going to see a boom because of outreach. So when you're doing some of your reporting, here's some tips. You want to look at the link quantity and type. So quantity is just how many, obviously. And looking at, like, okay, this is the kind of outreach we did. These are the hits that we got. What's your conversion rate for outreach versus actually getting a result that turned back into a backlink. The stuff you can look at is using link tracking lists from Moz. And then these other two metrics I've mentioned a lot, page authority and domain authority, those are Moz metrics, but that does a good job. The higher the number from the link that you're getting, as well as the page that it's linking into, measuring those can give you a really good idea of the value of that link, even if you're not seeing direct results. And then rankings, of course, that's really the main reason that we're doing this, is that we want to see the keywords that we've decided to target improve their ranking. And so link building can help improve the ranking of those keywords. So if you have specific links going into a non-homepage that is targeting a link, or sorry, is targeting a keyword, if that keyword sees an increase after, or an improvement after we've received that link, then that's a pretty good correlation. The hard part again is most likely we've also optimized that page or added some content to that page. And so the link could be a part of that, but you can't just say, oh, it's because we got a link. So the takeaways, links are a trust factor in a way. They're like a vote for your page. Hey, someone linked to us. That means they like our content or our website. And so they linked back to us. And so that's really seen by Google as, okay, I'm going to follow this link because obviously there's value that this other website is finding in it. Quality over quantity. Probably heard this a lot today. Quality meaning, it's better to have 10 links from 6 or 7 different sources that have a high domain authority versus 100 links from 1 or 2 sites that have a low domain authority. Don't spam. Make sure your outreach is personalized. Make sure that the message and the call to action essentially makes it easy to say yes. Limited follow-up. It takes a long time to see the results. I mean, you can do outreach and then maybe they're like, maybe it's January and they're like, okay, you can write something. It'll be, published in April. Like that's a long time. And then you wait another few months to see if it actually has an impact. Track those efforts carefully. Again, it's not just about what the success metrics are, but also how much time are you spending? How much outreach are you doing? And then what are you actually getting from that? Just in a straight up ratio of, I reached out to 100 different websites. I got 3 responses back and 2 of them are interested. Those are important because that can help you decide, is this worth it or is it not worth it? And then Obility can help. Again, we may not do the outreach ourselves. We are not a PR agency. I don't know, we can do a decent job as SEOs just because we know kind of how it works, but we're also SEOs. We're not publicists. We're not public relations. We're not the right people to necessarily be doing that. Now we can help with targeting all these, coming up with the entire strategy, but implementation and anything past, hey, here's your partners, send them an email, or we can help you develop topics, but the actual outreach is just not something that we do. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. I hope you learned a lot about link building today. Again, I'm Graham McConnell, and I hope that this provided some value to you, and thank you very much.